Hello, and welcome to a very special edition of The Piano Men. I've got a very special guest with me here in the studio tonight. Pleased to welcome to the show Mr. Alex Zsolt. He has released 20 CD projects. Many are collaborations with award-winning composer and arranger David T. Clydesdale. He's published 20 piano books, and he was asked to do 2 special concert events for the Walt Disney Company in Hollywood, California. He also continues to visit presidential museums and libraries across the country, taking his concert titled America My Home that features the music of America and his personal story of being the first American born in his family. He's also been invited by the Hollywood Family Film Awards and has been a frequent guest on several television networks. In 2017, Alex became a decibel artist for a new and award-winning piano manufacturer. Alex, welcome to the Piano Men.
Thank you so much. Good to be here, Stanley.
Yes, it's good to have you here. So we're going to start and talk about your childhood and upbringing. Are you from Nashville?
Not originally. Originally from Grand Rapids, Michigan. So I grew up in snow country.
Yes. Very different. The Midwest.
Yeah, very, very different, where you can have snow like the first week of May. So that was not good.
First week of May, okay.
Oh, yeah. It's, March says it's spring, but that's only on the calendar. In real life, in Michigan, it can go April and May. You always get that one big snowstorm left.
Unbelievable. I can't even imagine it snowing that late.
Oh, yeah. Well, in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, one year they had snow, not much, but a dusting worth on 4th of July.
4th of July.
Yep. Yeah.
Jeez. It got to be the temperature must have been very
cold.
Crazy.
Yeah.
It was really cold?
Very cold.
July? Then. Wow.
Yep. Yeah, well, they're almost to Canada there, but yeah, in a way, I think that's why, in a way, Nashville became Music City, USA. I mean, you can drive in 5 hours and be in like 12 different states, and the climate's moderate, and everyone's moving here right now. So
yeah, a lot of people are moving to Nashville.
Yep.
Crazy. It's unbelievable. Okay. So talk to me about your interest in music. Yeah. Was that something that you got into early on in life?
Well, it was early on. I mean, I remember going to church and being 6 years old and trying to come home, and we didn't have a piano and organ. Things were very, very tight growing up. But somebody had given my family a 3-manual Wurlitzer organ.
Ooh. And
so it had 1-octave pedal, and I would just come home and I would try to play what I heard the hymns at church, and with one finger and by ear. Well, I used my fingers, but I was listening, type of thing. But my mom noticed it even sooner, that there may be a gift of music somewhere, because I grew up and was born during the era of cassette tapes. So she could put on a cassette tape, and she could do anything she wanted in the house, from work to cooking to cleaning, all that stuff. And what would happen was, when the A side of the tape would stop, I would start crying, But all she had to do was turn it over to the B side, hit play, and I was shut up. So she could keep doing what she wanted to do, and that's when she thought, well, maybe music, something is connecting with him and music in some way, and that was really like the start of it. So
come to think of it, for me, when I started listening to music, it was through the cassette tapes. Albeit, it was towards the tail end of that time period.
Yeah.
But I remember thinking that whenever it was over, it was over. I was like, whoa.
Sure.
Because it's there's not another side to it. And don't you remember on the cassette tapes too, like the tape
would
hiss? Start falling apart?
Oh, that too. Yeah. You got a little pencil and
yeah.
Yeah, that was there's some charm to that thing, but at least it wasn't an 8-track, where you can prop up your window. So.
Yes. Do you remember some of the first CDs or cassette tapes you started listening to or bought?
Oh, gosh. I don't know. It was a mix of things from different styles, from jazz to classical to gospel music. So I was just, if it's done well, I love all sorts of music. And that was always, my thing was to listen to as much music as I could, especially early on, to hear what people were doing with music, or even soundtrack albums. Those are amazing things. Hollywood doing soundtracks with orchestra and choir, and I was always impressed by that.
Who were like some of your favorite artists listening to as a kid growing up?
As a kid growing up, well, you're as a piano player, you're taking lessons and all that. So And I'm born in America but Hungarian, so I would listen with some recommendations from my piano teacher to Franz Liszt and but I love the jazz stuff, Duke Ellington and Count Basie, and those were great artists because they open up a whole world of jazz and improv and hearing what can be done. So in a way, I'm a mutt when it comes to, because I'm primarily a gospel pianist, but I put in my training and my influences of classical music and jazz into what I do.
Yeah, it's very. You seem like you got a well-rounded experience because the jazz and classical world, it's like a new world. It's a different world from like your pop and your rock stuff.
Right.
And just it's very unpredictable too. Like when you're playing, you're playing with several people. You can play by yourself or play with people in a band.
Sure.
And just improvise different times. You don't really get to see that as much on a big stage with like rock and roll artists. Like you'll get the solos, but it's not as found as often as compared to those genres.
Oh, I totally agree. And there's a whole, like you said, it's a whole different world, different animal, different approach. But it's a good one, and you're a pianist as well, so you get that whole concept of, when you're a soloist, you get to do so many things on a keyboard like that.
Yeah, when you first started taking lessons, tell me about, for you, what your training was like.
Yeah, it was at that time the Faber and Faber books were out, which I think is a great series for kids. Mm-hmm. So I was more in the Alfred book series, which is interesting because now I write for Alfred Publishing some piano books, but things come full circle, which is kind of funny. But it was starting out with the classical, and then when you go and audition for music school, I went to the School of Music at Central Michigan University, and you have to audition and you have to do all that stuff. So in high school, I was preparing for that and doing the 4 different time periods and having a piece from each period and really focusing on that. But while doing that, I still loved playing and learning about jazz and about the gospel music and all those kinds of things. So it was always a learning. Always early on, it was just learning, trying to absorb as much as I could about music.
What was it about jazz, classical, and gospel music that really you gravitated towards as opposed to the other genres?
Yeah, well, with the gospel, it was the impact that the music does, and about faith, and that. I mean, that's just to me that music is a calling, and I'm fulfilling my calling, my assignment. But with like classical and jazz, it was. You can go from a time period like Bach that's so intricate in how it was written, and then go to another period with Chopin that's such music of the heart, and the Romantic period and all that stuff. To then jazz where it's a whole different thing of, you have these chord changes and you can do so much with that. And I'm glad we can't copyright chord progressions because boy, there'd be a lot of songs that would never be out there, right? Mm-hmm. But just to be able to have a basic understanding of that, even to be able to navigate the keyboard and you learn the rules, and so that then later you can break the rules. That's kind of how I look at the period of classical music to getting to jazz music.
It definitely is a different feel too,
Yep.
because with classical it's more slow.
Sure.
Not really a lot of fast movement. With jazz, there's like a beat to it.
Right.
That's the one difference I've noticed with jazz.
That's true, and there's some correlations between jazz and gospel music. Like spirituals and Amazing Grace, and on the pentatonic scale part of it, and how that was written and the history behind it. Which, oddly enough, like Amazing Grace turned 250 years old this year.
Wow.
And and it's like one of the most recognized hymns out there, and that people know and sing.
Yeah, it's iconic.
It is, yeah. People who even aren't of faith know that song and know the words. So it's lasted, that's what music can do, connect us in powerful ways.
As far as pop and rock go, were you into those genres as well?
Oh yeah, I don't mind them at all. I love pop. I think there's value in pop music. There's different eras of pop music, and that keeps changing over time. The pop era of music from the 70s or 80s has its style, just like the ones from 90s, 2000s, or now is a little different. Now you have a lot of loops. The way I think it's changed is that now you have not a typical songwriting basis where you have a verse, chorus, bridge, chorus type thing. But now it seems like it's a lot of the loops that are used from different artists. They use the same kind of loop, but it's done in phrases. So you get an idea of a phrase, and that either gets repeated. So it's a little different songwriting than earlier of pop music, but rock music too, and whether it's Kiss or Bon Jovi or some of the people of today that are doing their own take on rock music, So
it's definitely changed, as we'll talk about later on in the show. But who are like some of your pop rock influences? We talked about the jazz and classical stuff.
Yeah, I guess with pop, gosh, it can go anywhere from Elton John, or I remember some great charts from Tom Jones or Engelbert Humperdinck. The two of them had the same manager, but were different styles. It was like Gordon Mills put Tom Jones on the rock and roll stuff. They put Engelbert on the ballads. So that was like, going early on, but I don't know. I even recorded on like my love song album, Aerosmith's I Don't Want to Miss a Thing. It's almost like a ballad. I turned it into a ballad thing. So
that's a beautiful, beautiful tune.
Oh, I love it. Love
Gorgeous.
It. From a great movie. And so for me, music has been just so eclectic because I like so much of it and so many different styles and from different artists and even, not well-known artists. I think that's one of the nice things about where music is today is there's a lot of exposure to artists that may never, ever have gotten exposure in a way that, some people may never be actors or actresses that have been getting more exposure now because there's things like YouTube and things like this. But there's a plus and minus, as we talked before the show.
Yes.
There's a plus and minus to those kind of media outlets.
Absolutely. For you, when you started and developed your training sense of performance, what was your experience like when you started out, like in high school, in college, I guess I should say too, before you started doing it professionally?
Well, I was like a typical kid, typical boy, where I loved sports, and early on, like elementary school, I would love playing soccer, but middle school and was baseball. And I was good at baseball. Half the season in one of them, I had 1,000% on base percentage. I was really proud of that, and it added to my popularity, at school. But then music took over, and I was doing things like the musicals. I loved marching band. Now, I should tell your listeners, no, I did not march with the piano. Although I did tell my band director one time, let's turn these pedals into gas pedals, and I can, march around the field with the piano. But he didn't like that idea. So my band instrument was saxophone, tenor saxophone. I ended up minoring on that in college. But, it was the symphony band. I also did jazz band in high school and all the musicals in the springtime. And I loved all of it. They were all different, but it was just getting that exposure to music and different kinds of music.
Yeah. Did you find the musical theater aspect a little bit different from the marching band and the jazz band? Because it's a whole nother animal in itself.
Yeah, well, it is, and I loved it because the musical. My favorite musical is The Music Man.
That's
classic.
a really good one.
I love that one.
That's
and
a good one.
Years later, here again, talking about full circle, in 2008, I was able to do a Good Friday breakfast with Shirley Jones.
Wow.
And so it was like, being all nervous because here I am meeting the woman from Music Man and Partridge Family, But the musicals is such a different feel and flavor. And one of my favorite memories is in 2016, my high school, they invited me to come back and raise funds for the district. And in 2002, they built a brand new music hall, performing arts center that looked like a mini Carnegie Hall in a way. Has the wraparound and everything. Well, I told them that night in 2016 that's not how we had it. We had to go to the elementary school across the street. We had to take PVC piping and create our own pit and put fabric around that. So, that was my experience with it, but all of us loved doing those musicals. And it would be late night rehearsals, and, our band director worked hard. He was there from 6 a.m. till midnight every day, especially during that season. So, I'm trying to remember, we did that one. We did A Chorus Line, Bye Bye Birdie, Meet Me in St. Louis, some of the classic ones.
It's definitely a commitment. It takes a lot of hard work to really put those musicals on.
Yep.
And I can tell right now, because I was in a play myself when I was in high school,
Nice.
and it takes a lot of work to get to perfection.
Sure.
So I can attest to that. 100%.
Which one did you do?
I did Hairspray.
Oh, okay. Nice.
I was in Hairspray. I was acting in Hairspray.
Wow.
But I remember when the band would play, and I played the role of Mr. Pinky. So there was like a certain note that you heard when it was time for Mr. Pinky to walk on stage. So the band is just as important as your cast is.
True. Very true.
Yeah. So we're gonna segue to our first selection of the evening. This is a rendition of the national anthem, the Star Spangled Banner. This is a really good rendition, by the way. I got to hear it earlier. Tell me about the making and recording process behind this version.
Yeah, so it features full orchestra, and it's arranged by David T. Clydesdale. And he's just, he's got 26 Dove Awards, 2 Grammys, and just a great, great guy. And he's a musical genius. This actually, we turned into a piano arrangement because it was originally done by Sandy Patty in 1986, and she sang it for the rededication of the Statue of Liberty, which ended her up on the Johnny Carson show the following week.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So this, I talked to David and said, hey, we've got to turn this into a piano thing. And so that's what we've done with it. And so it's just big and bombastic. And there's a new verse at the end that was written for that rededication. So there's going to be some new lyrics that people will hear at the end of it.
All right, we're going to hear it right here. This is the Star Spangled Banner on the Piano Men. All right, you're tuned to the Piano Men with Stanley Carr. And we're talking with pianist and arranger Alex Zsolt tonight about his illustrious career. I can totally hear the power in that song. Like, that was like symphonic.
And bombastic. Almost, all that's missing are the fireworks,
Exactly. It's like the 4th of July.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes. Wow. Okay. So you, as you mentioned earlier, you went to Central Michigan University and studied music there. Tell me about your experience attending the program.
Yeah, it was a very good one. I ended up with a music ed degree, K through 12, and music composition degree. And it was a good time to be there because they had officially made it a school of music. And in that, the building is actually shaped like a piano.
Really?
It is. So you have like the curve on the ends there, and the windows for the offices are in groups of 2s and 3s long. They're almost like the Country Music Hall of Fame, know, downtown. Mm-hmm. So it was a very good time to be there. Everything was so fresh and new. I had my general ed classes too, but as far as like the degrees in the music program, it was, I think, altogether like 300 or 400 students altogether at one time. So it was, like high school again in a way, until you then go out to do your astronomy general ed class where you have a classroom of 500 people, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So, but I loved it. It was, I had great professors, especially my piano and my saxophone professor. I minored in saxophone, so had great experiences there.
What was it during your time there? What experiences can you tell me that? What can you tell me, like, the professors? Was there anything like messages that you took away from that time? Pieces of advice that they gave you that stuck with you?
Well, one of the big ones was from my professor, Dr. Alexandra Mascola David, and she's Portuguese.
Cool.
Oh, well, sort of cool, because she would crack the whip a lot. She was old school with her approach.
Okay.
I'm just teasing with her. But what was neat about her was we did not do any repertoire the first year of music school. So she had some hand damage that happened to her years before, and she learned the Tubman technique, which is another pianist out there, and it all dealt with how you rotate in and out of notes, and you have arrows and directions to notes. So she made all of her students in the first year learn this technique so you can play more pain-free without tension and without having any hand damage happen later, like carpal tunnel or tendonitis. Mm-hmm. So that was our first year, but the challenge for me was they didn't know what to do with me, really, because I went in with the ed degree. Yeah, I was emphasis on piano, and they didn't have a piano ed emphasis. So then my minor was saxophone, so I had to do not just one jury in junior and senior year, but I had to do 2. I had to prepare for a piano jury and a saxophone jury. And I said, well, nobody else has to do this. Why do I? Well, it's because I was more of a piano major versus, saxophone or flute or violin or something like that, solely. So, it was in the early years of them developing some of the programs, and, they would fix some of the errors like that. But I learned a lot from her, and the biggest thing was technique and the approach to the piano, how to shape phrases and really emphasize where you need to, where to build up the dynamics and all that. And so it was great.
Well, when you're talking about saxophone, I mean, another great instrument.
Yeah.
But learning another instrument can be very difficult at times because it's not the same.
True.
With piano, it's all, you learn one thing, the melodies, where the notes are, the staff, and everything on like another instrument, it changes.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it does. And honestly, both in, growing up and learning, and like in high school being on saxophone, having my piano lessons and learning piano really helped me with that area. And here's where it helped me again too. The kids that were learning theory, and I had to go through theory too, but the ones that had background of piano had a much better understanding. It was much easier than those that were just like a clarinet major or a solo instrument like that, flute, the other ones like that, because they didn't have like in their mind chord structure and how they can look at the keyboard and see chords, because on clarinet you can't do that, So it was a whole different approach and learning it that way, I think, for them than it was for the piano students there. We breezed through theory. Now, our theory teacher, she was old school because she had taught at that point theory like 30 or 40 years. So we could not use Finale, which is a music software program. We had to actually we were graded on our musical penmanship, how we would draw a B flat or how we would draw eighth notes and whole notes. I mean, that was a whole other category she graded us on.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah. Dr. Mooney Albrecht, she's passed away a couple years ago, but I loved learning from her.
Yeah, it seems like you learned a lot too.
Oh yeah.
So you graduate, get your degree. You're
Yeah.
now taking your skills out into the real world, and you start pursuing your dream. Well, tell me about your first professional gigs.
They were. I was so green about things because I thought, okay, I've been given the gift of music. Who wouldn't want to book me? Who wouldn't want to schedule me? Why can't I do concerts wherever I want to do them? I was 17, 18 years old when I did my first album, and I was already starting to do some of those concerts like when I turned 18. And I was doing things part-time because I wanted to be able to do things full-time once I left music school. So during my first concert experience, I'll never forget, it was at a church. And I did the concert, and afterwards, when I was exhausted, I was more exhausted then than I am now after a concert, which is kind of funny. But it was just so different because I was trying to gauge things and learn things. How do you, in a way, read people that are coming to the concert as far as musically? And one thing I heard years later, which is so true, Eartha Kitt, she sang, and she said she doesn't sing at people, she sings to people. And there's a huge difference in that, and I agree with her 100% in what she says. So those early years for me was really learning how to take rejection. And, I hired a booking agent here in Nashville from Michigan at Ambassador Artist Agency. And I said to the lady, Dana, I said, Dana, I don't want you to book for me because I understand you have to have so many things in place before you're like a booking agent. And that's where a lot of people make a mistake. They think, oh, if I get a booking agent, things are going to be great, or a A&R person, a PR guy or whatever. But I asked her, I said, teach me how to do bookings. And that changed everything because then I learned that was a trade in itself in how to book myself.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, it's a different animal when you're doing everything solo.
Right.
So you start learning how to do it, At first with everything, it's not easy. It takes time to get it. And so for you, I'm sure it took you a good few months before you finally started getting the hang of it.
Oh, actually a few years because you keep changing, you keep adapting things, you keep learning things. And the learning, you never stop learning with it. And, this is my 26th year on the road. And I'm just very thankful I'm still able to do music like I felt all my life, like Ray Charles says, it's like a body part. So that's why I look at it. To me, it's like a body. It's just an extension of who I am. And it all deals with music, yes, but also my faith and what that music does and how that encourages and lifts people's spirits. And so it's definitely my calling. And there's always stuff. My saxophone professor, John Nickel, he always said, it takes 2 lifetimes to learn all that you can in music, but you only get one. So
That's a pretty good statement.
it is, and it's true. It's very true. Yeah. So,
well, our next selection here, another patriotic tune. It's called American Salute. It's kind of a medley here of a few songs. Tell me about the recording process as far as this song is concerned.
Yeah, this one, we start with the orchestra, record that. This one, if I remember right, no vocals on this one. It's pure instrumental. And, the piano comes in it's such a medley in patriotism because you have, I think there's 5 different ones in there. So we wanted to do a medley that offered potpourri of musical styles within the genre of patriotic Americana music. And so this has that from My Country 'Tis of Thee, God of Our Fathers, and then goes into America the Beautiful, which, I love that one. That's such a powerful thing. So it gets, again, I don't know how to do patriotic music without being big and bombastic.
Well, we're going to play it right now. This is American Salute on the Piano Men. All right, you're tuned to the Piano Men with Stanley Carr, talking with musician Alex Zsolt about his career in the music business. I think we could all use a little bit of patriotism tonight, especially with our current climate.
I agree, 100%.
Yes. All right, so the album that we've been playing a couple of songs from so far on the show called America, My Home, this is actually, you've been taking this album out on the road as far as as part of a tour.
I do. It's, I'll do it during Memorial Day weekend, 4th of July, Veterans Day, and also Patriots Day, which is September 11th. And I was actually walking the grounds of Ground Zero in New York City a couple weeks after the towers fell. And, I'll never forget what I saw, what I heard, and all the stuff that was going on in New York City at that time. So this album is kind of birthed from that, and also being first American in my family. And I just love taking this out. We have multimedia that goes up on the screens. So we do put fireworks like that on there. Sometimes I've done some outdoor events with this too, but also the presidential museums, which I've done for both Republican and Democrat parties for their presidents and museums. So like here in town, I did a concert for Andrew Jackson's The Hermitage. Out in California, I was at President Nixon's library there. And so it's been neat to take this music and story out.
Yeah, I actually went to the George W. Bush Presidential Center in Dallas. That was a really cool experience for me, getting to see the library, get to see pictures of W,
sure,
and getting to see the just the gorgeous artwork that they had on display.
Oh, yeah, and all the artifacts that are in museums like that. One of the neat ones, too, is Lincoln's up in Illinois. That's, if you ever get a chance to go there, that's a neat
I'll definitely
historic
check that
one.
out. Yeah. So it's really an amazing feeling, getting to play this music in front of a live audience and get to go to all these different places to promote your music, your content.
Yeah, I never thought this would be happening, some of the things that I've been able to do. And I'm just very thankful for those opportunities that have come along.
Yeah. One of the highlights of your career that we were talking about earlier, you got to play Disney's El Capitan Theater in Hollywood, California.
Yeah, a few times. So this was in honor of the Sherman Brothers. And Richard M. Sherman and Robert Sherman, they wrote, oddly enough, people may not know this, but they wrote more music for the movies than any music duo out there. They wrote Mary Poppins, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. It wasn't a Disney production, but Walt let them go for that one. Jungle Book, Winnie the Pooh, It's a Small World, all these classic Disney songs. Well, they wrote that. So Robert had passed away in 2012, but in January, it was right before he passed, but he could not be there. But Richard Sherman was there. And now, talk about being a nervous pianist. Here I am having to play. It was Rob Richards on the theater organ. He's the house organist there. It was Richard Sherman's musical director who also played piano. So we did like duet things, we did trio things between the two and three of us, and playing these melodies that are so iconic. And I'm like, I hope I don't mess up. I hope I don't mess up. It's like one of those things, because it's like if you hit a wrong note and it's a small world, everybody will know, that kind of a thing. So, but he was the nicest, most down-to-earth guy. I consider him a friend. We just celebrated his birthday and my birthday together this past year.
That's awesome.
Went to the home and was able to play on the piano that he wrote Feed the Birds on, which we recorded on the new album. But it was, to do a concert like that, and it's such a historic theater. It was built in 1909, I believe, but Disney didn't buy it until the mid to late 90s. So it's a full movie palace. They show 6-7 movies a day, and then they do concert or stage productions too on top of that. So that's what this concert was for.
That's so amazing that you're able to take part in that, because that's such an iconic figure in the not just with Disney, but in all of music and entertainment. So many songs have been written by those guys.
Oh, yeah. Well, he's 95 years old, almost 96, and, it's Disney's 100th year. Just an incredible human being, and, he's the last link, one of the last links to Walt Disney, working at the office, being right next door. And, every Friday, Walt would come and say he'd call them the boys, play and sing my favorite song. And what was Feed the Birds?
He's what you call a living legend.
He is, yep.
Every sense of the word.
Yeah.
And you've also, we were talking earlier, you're such a huge Batman fan. You got to have a really cool experience with Adam West.
Yeah, I got to know Adam in 95 and Bert in 2005. And I guess I became part of the Bat Pack somehow, mainly through my friend Wally Wingert, who's a voiceover talent out there. And, such a fan where I even dressed up as Robin to do Adam's Hollywood Star Ceremony and Burt Ward's Hollywood Star Ceremony. So that was, another highlight to my life, was taking my love of music, but also my Batman, the 60s Batman, and being able to be a part of things like that. And, they always say never meet your heroes. But that was not the case with, like, Adam West. He was just... What people saw in Batman was really who he was. He's just a funny guy. There's nobody... I've never met anybody else like Adam West. He was just so unique.
He really was a character.
Oh, yeah. For sure. And, even... this was one of the funny things. We were at a San Diego Comic-Con. I've got to share this story.
Yeah.
So we were escorting him to go back to leave the convention floor. And... so he tries to say, well, let's go quickly because I don't want to attract too much attention. Well, meanwhile, we're all dressed up as characters, as, his backdrop, and he's wearing a hat that says Pure West. So it's like, you think people are not going to recognize you, So,
you're giving it away.
I know he's giving it away. He's like, but he was so funny, so funny.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Well, you're doing all these things. You've met all these people, playing at different venues, recording these beautiful pieces of music. What made you decide to move to Nashville?
That's a very good question. So the big decision was, this was in 2009, and there was a downturn in the economy, and honestly, one of the biggest reasons was adjusting the travel expense to get to where I was going, from churches or theaters or wherever. And I had already recorded in Nashville, but also another element to this was it was almost like a packaged element, because I had publishers that said, well, if you ever move to Nashville, we'll talk to you then. If you ever move to Nashville, we'll talk to you then. And I thought, yeah, right. Well, sure enough, I had written a piano book. I had submitted it to a publisher. At a music conference, I talked to some of them directly out in California, and they were the ones that said that if you ever move to Nashville, well, I moved to Nashville, and I called them up, and I held them to their word. So I said, remember, you told me this, and I have a piano book ready to go. And they published my first, I moved here in 2009, and they published my first piano book in 2010.
See, wow. Dreams come true.
They do. They really do.
Piano books. So this is like sheet music.
Yeah, sheet music, yep.
Sheet music, okay.
Yeah, so I've done them for Alfred Music, for Lillinus and Lorenz Music, for Hal Leonard, and Shawnee Press. And so been writing these piano books, and then I'll record a demo of the book. So, and they're in different categories. I've done moderately advanced to advanced piano books for those publishers.
what's your favorite kind of piano book to write?
Well, all of these have been gospel piano books, and like with Alfred, they were from the contemporary. We call it, the title for these is based on a church service. So we have the contemporary service, the traditional service, the Christmas traditional or contemporary. We've done a mix of that. So really, I've done mainly just all of the gospel Christian music, from whether it's a hymn or a contemporary worship song.
It seems like it'd be fun to write one of those books because all you have to do is just write the notes and just get the staff all ready to go.
Well, here's the interesting part of the process with publishing is, my composition professor, Dr. David Gillingham, he always taught me how to make things look pretty on a page, right? Mm-hmm. And how to get your score to, if you don't have a blank space on the last page, and how you adjust the measures. Well, I would send it to the publisher early on, and then they would come back, and it was engraved and would have a whole different look to it because they have their own templates. Mm-hmm. So finally I asked them, I said, am I doing too much work here by trying to make it all look pretty? So they said, yeah, just send us the notes, send us your dynamics, send the articulations, what you really want, and we'll take care of the rest. I'm like, oh, well, that's everything that I was not taught in music school. We had to have that line of perfectionism in a way. And so it was nice to just be able to get the notes on the page and let the engraving process happen on its own.
Definitely a far cry from writing a memoir.
Well, yeah, that's for sure.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's neat, and I love when young people, when kids get these books, and they have a goal to achieve, and they really practice hard at it. And sometimes people have sent me links to either YouTube or their church service, and seeing church pianists do these piano books. I'm like, wow, that's really, really cool.
And you're teaching, right?
Well, I have. It's called the Alex Zsolt Music Academy. So I'll go into either a university or a high school or even middle school, elementary school too, and do master classes and work with students and have conversations like what you and I are having tonight, and try to encourage them and in their musical journey. And you never know, but I mean, people gravitate to music we all have gifts. That's the thing. Ours, for you and me, it's music. For other people, it's something else. But how we all pull together and lean on each other's gifts. I think that's what's amazing.
Yeah, and the cool thing about today is that you can have several gifts.
Yep.
Multi-talented, like in every facet of, whether it's media or whatever. It's the universe is in your grasp.
Yes.
We're going to segue here to our next selection. Weekend in New England, one of my favorite Barry Manilow songs. Let's talk about this.
Okay.
How did this whole recording come about?
Well, I saw people like Barry, like Rod Stewart. They were coming out with albums called, songs of decades. So they were doing songs of the 50s, songs of the 60s, 70s, and 80s. For a while, that was a big trend with all these major artists. So I was listening to them, and then I think in the car, and all of a sudden I said, okay, what can I do something like this? And then the idea came to me, was like, why not do a musical journey of love songs over 100 years so people can hear the difference? So on this album, there's a couple bonus ones, but there's songs from every decade, the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s. So I did one from each. But this one is one of my favorites, Weekend in New England, and I actually sent it to Randy Edelman, who wrote it, and he sent me, it was a very nice compliment he gave me. But the funny thing with this song is the title is Weekend in New England, but nowhere in the lyric line does it say Weekend in New England. It says Time in New England. But honestly, I think the melody that Randy wrote is the most gorgeous melody, and the way Barry does it is incredible.
All right, yeah, we're gonna hear it right now. This is Weekend in New England, right here on the Piano Men. All right, we're back here on the Piano Men with Stanley Carr, talking with the one and only Alex Zsolt. Man, just got about a few minutes left, and wanted to talk about what's next, man. What have you got coming up on the horizon?
That's a big question, really. Well, we just finished my mom's documentary called From Hungary to America, and it's a DVD, and I did a couple Hungarian pieces on there, bonus tracks, but it's her life story of how that all happened. And then hopefully in a month, I'm thinking in about a month, we'll have that new album coming out, and I think it's one of how else do I say it? There's guests on there. One of them is Paul Hefty, who is Neil Hefty's son, as a tribute to his dad. We did Lil Darlin'. It's based on a concert I did called A Night at the Ivories. So the album's called Music at the Ivories. And so it has like Broadway on it, classical, jazz, hymn, worship, Disney. But then we have one pop song, and that's I Will Always Love You, and it features Dolly Parton on there. So she's singing on my album, which I can't believe. I like pinching myself on that one. But big production album. We recorded the orchestra in Prague, so it's the Philharmonic Orchestra in Prague. We did the background vocals here in Nashville with talented studio musicians, and then recorded the piano here in town too. So that comes out. Hopefully we're shooting for March 1st, but it might be the 15th. We're just, trying to get the final mixing done.
Yeah, it's very unique.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
So hopefully people will listen to it and not like it all, because it has so many styles of music on there.
Well, how do you feel the music business has changed in the last several years?
Oh my gosh, do you have another hour? How much more time we have? We could talk an hour about that one.
We'll kind of condense it. We got a little bit.
Oh,
of 5
okay.
minutes.
Well, it just, it's how music is being delivered to people. And, I think, like my brother and some others, they asked the question, well, why are concert tickets so much? Why am I paying $300 to $700 for bleacher seats? Well, the record has been kind of destroyed with the streaming services, And you and I talked earlier, and I kind of joked around. I said, you know what, I'm going to create something called Carify, where for $9.99 a month, the first hour people can drive a BMW, the second a Mercedes, the third hour Lamborghini. And I just don't think the car industry would really like that. I think they would frown upon it because they could not make any money from it. Well,
Exactly.
That's what's happened to us artists, major and independent artists. Every artist has been affected by the new medium. So I think and I hope that the Music Modernization Act that was signed in 2018 by President Trump would go into effect soon, so that this will become a fair playing field for people out there. And I'm a big advocate of that law because it puts the songwriters back in business and also creates a fair system for streaming sites and things like that. Because the big companies like Spotify, Apple Music, they're making money from it off the backs of the artists.
Yeah, definitely it's unfair, and hopefully things will change sooner than later, and we can all have an equal piece of the pie.
That's right. And that's just it. It's not an equal piece of the pie. And that's a great way to say it, Stanley.
Thank you.
Because right now they're taking like 99.8% of that pie.
Yeah.
When you get like a quarter of 1 cent to 2 cents per click, it's like, really?
It gets you all frustrated,
Yeah.
flustered over it.
Well, and as a creative, how do you dump all that money into one song and the production side of it? And everybody wants it for free, like $9.99 a month for millions of songs, millions.
It's crazy.
Every day, like 100 to 50 to 200,000 songs are added on like Spotify alone.
Yeah.
So, call me Spotify. Let's talk.
Before we go, what do you have to say to anybody that wants to pursue a career in the music business?
Yeah, this advice I have to give to myself too, and I hear it from my board at times too. But never give up. You can give in, you can give out to something, but always be persistent. Always keep going. You're going to have good days, you're going to have bad days. That's for everybody in the music business of things. But never give up. Always keep it moving.
Yeah, I like that. The positive side of it, because so many people, so many artists, they struggle, and they've got to keep pushing through when times are tough. And the music business, it's hard to break into.
Right. Yeah, and you know what? Some of you out there listening, you want to get in touch with me? My website's pianocreations.com. We went with that because my name's too hard, and my first album was called Creations. So pianocreations.com, and email me. And if you have more questions, I'd love to talk to you.
Yeah. Well, Alex, this has been wonderful. Getting a chance to talk with you here tonight means a lot to me and to the listeners. I just want to say thank you again.
Oh, you're welcome.
You're more than welcome to come back on the show.
Let's do it. I'll come back.
Yeah, we'll make it happen.